Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to talk about La Jetée, a French science fiction film that came out in 1962. La Jetée. Now, I should say that this is a short film. It's only 28 minutes long. I talked about The Time Machine last time, and this is also a time travel movie, but a very different type of movie that deals with time travel. This was directed by Chris Marker. And just a few things I'll say about it. This movie uses montage to tell the story, where it's still photography, images. That's how the story's told. There's also narration, and there's also music as well, and some sound effects, and there is some dialogue sometimes that we hear, but it's told in this very unique and for its time and even now in experimental way. I mean, it was proof that you didn't need a lot of special effects or monsters or spaceships to make a really interesting science fiction film, and that's part of the real beauty of this film. So there is a story in the film. So the narrator, we learn, is living beneath Paris after Paris has been destroyed in the Third World War. And we learn that scientists beneath Paris are experimenting with time travel. Okay? Realizing that's really the only way they could possibly save civilization, is to send someone back to maybe prevent it from happening, right? And we never learn about how the science or any of it works. It's just a narrative device. Like, we see effectively characters, or the narrator seems to be strapped into a chair, and he seems to be being put through some sort of electrical shocks, or who knows what they're doing, but you get the sense it's about trying to use the consciousness to put somebody, I guess, to put your consciousness into the past or into the future. As we learn, they can do that as well. And the narrator has this one strong memory he has from when he was a kid, and it was on the pier at the airport in Paris before the war, and he witnessed, he remembers seeing a woman on the pier, and he remembers seeing a man being shot at the pier. And that memory, everything around that memory is really etched into his mind, okay? So I don't want to spoil too much of what happens in the story, but basically, when he is able to go back to the time period where his younger self is still there somewhere, but he's there how many years later, so 20 or 30 years later, and he is able to meet up with a woman he remembers seeing as a child, and he's trying to establish a relationship with her. So there's really like an interesting love story within this time travel film, a really moving love story. It's really a story, I think, about memory and how what we remember, it's hard to know what we're going to remember when we get older. You know, certain random moments are going to be with us in ways that only that we could really understand. And so the movie really is really philosophical about memory, very poetic about the idea of memory and things like that. It's also a very existential film as well, where I think there is this idea in the film of when the time traveler is back to the time before the world was basically destroyed, that he enjoys so much being at that place at that time. He gets to spend time with this woman, and they go to various locations throughout Paris, just just walking in the park or going to a museum, just things that if you're living in a post-apocalyptic world, I mean, what would that before world, I mean, it would just appear to be some sort of almost like fantastical spear, of what was lost and what civilization once had. So the movie really, there's a really strong emotional core to this film, but it's also very thought provoking as well. It's not your typical, dystopian story. It's really a story about many things. It's about emotion, about memory, about the passage of time, and I think even the way the film is structured, I think as you're watching the film, if you're able to see the film uninterrupted and just watch it for 28 minutes, I'd be curious to know, does it feel like a long movie? Does it feel like a very short film? The film itself, I think all movies do that to an extent. They play with our perception of time, but this movie really, I think, makes us think about how we process time and what it means to us on all levels, whether it's emotional or intellectual or any number of things. So it's just a really, really creative film in all those ways. There's also some hope in the film as well. I think there's also a hopeful thread running through the film, but the still photography is so vibrant. The images are so memorable throughout La Jetée. It's very memorable and just it's the way it presents like this apocalyptic future. It's all done through still photographs, and you really don't need to create, big special effects or sets or anything like that. So yeah, it's a mysterious movie, and I like how mysterious it is, and it doesn't explain everything about how everything works. I mean, we just kind of have to go with it on the journey and see where the story goes, and there is definitely a circular nature to the story as well. So it's a cool movie, no doubt. And this is, I think, other time travel movies have certainly been influenced by this movie. The way La Jetée uses form as well, the way it plays with how a movie can be structured and how to tell a narrative and how to experiment with narrative, and this movie really does some impressive things there as well. So there was a movie, Terry Gilliam reimagined, I guess you could say, this film in 1995 with 12 Monkeys, which was a big Hollywood science fiction movie that was, like I said, a reinterpretation of this film, which is a good movie, one of the Terry Gilliam movies that I like, and I think there was even a TV show that followed it. But if you want to really see some experimental science fiction that we see a lot in the 1960s, where I think the 60s is a transitional decade a lot for science fiction movies, where we can see, on the one hand, a lot of movies. We still get a lot of monster movies, and we still get a lot of from the 50s, like a lot of the things from the 50s. But we also see the genre stretching out quite a bit, whether it's through some French filmmakers. We see it in Japan as well. Other parts of the world are starting to really experiment with science fiction and push the genre forward a bit in terms of cinema. So La Jetée, I believe this movie is streaming on the Criterion channel. It might be at other places too, but it's definitely, if you like time travel movies, if you really like time travel, this is really a must-watch movie. And if you do see it, I would be curious to know what you think of this very unique film. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.